The United States makes the UN work when it wants it to work. And that is exactly the way it should be, because the only question for the United States is what's in our national interest.
My name is John, and the International Criminal Court is now in session once again. Christmas is 2 days away, and we are going to once again look at the situation within Ukraine. So, let's start. First of all, we're going to look at the Zaporizhzhia direction. The Russians have continued advancing eastward towards the western roads going into Orikhiv, and they have also continued their pushes as well towards the village of Pavlovka and Novoye Kovlivka. And once the Russians are able to capture these two villages, they'll be able to maybe capture these without too much of an issue, because of the fact that there are almost no logistics going into either of, or no, I wouldn't say either, to any of these villages. But also, if they're able to capture it, then the next plausible target is Kami Shufovka. If this is captured, then the road to Zaporizhzhia city is busted wide open, and the armed forces of Ukraine are going to be in complete panic mode from that moment forward. Either that, or the Russians are going to just try to take Orikhiv in the early phase of 2026. But to be quite honest with you guys, I don't think they're in a rush for it. Because if we go eastward, we're going to talk about the GULYAYPOLE direction, which is going very well right now for Russia. So, the village of Andriivka in the Dnipropetrovsk direction has fallen, and with this capture, they are not too far from the Vovcha River. Now, as all of you know, during the month of December, Taiki was recaptured by the Ukrainians, and it looked like they were going to try to do a push further southward towards recapturing the villages of Gai, Novoalexandriivka, and Oleksivka, but so far that has not materialized. Instead, it looks like the Ukrainians were bogged down once again, and because of that, they weren't able to make any further advances down south. On the other hand, with the capture of Andriivka, the Russians will be able to continue pushing northward towards the Vovcha River, which separates the towns of Oleksandrovka and Pokrovsky from each other. And once the Russians are able to capture Oleksandriivka or Oleksandrovka, then I think it's just a matter of time before the Russians try to enter Pokrovsky, like crossing the river itself. But I don't really know if that's quite possible due to the fact that this river doesn't really play around. As far as I know, I think it's a little deep, and wide enough to at least cause logistics problems. And for that reason alone, I don't think the Russians are going to cross it too soon, even like once they reach it. Instead, I think they're going to keep going north of it. And then sometime in 2026, then they'll try to cross at a more, less crappy position. And then they'll look to encircle Pokrovsky from the north, and maybe from the east too. Now, going further south, the Russians have continued to consolidate their positions in the fields adjacent to the Gaicha River, and within the town of GULYAYPOLE itself, the Russians have achieved all sorts of success. They now control over 70% of the town, including the roads south of GULYAYPOLE itself. The Ukrainians in this area here are about to be encircled, if not completely routed out. And once they're forced to withdraw from here, then this road going from Dorozhenka will be busted wide open. And as a result, the Russians will have basically smooth ways to enter GULYAYPOLE. Not just from the east, but from the north and from the south. And the only road that the Ukrainians still have control of is the west, but I don't know how much longer that's going to hold, because in the recent pushes that have been documented as of late, the Russians are very deep in the town center. Now, they haven't reached the central Rada quite yet. The Rada is right here, that is. But they have taken control over basically half of the downtown area in GULYAPOLE. And the statue, or monument that is dedicated to Ukrainian anarchist Nestor Makhno, is just a block away or so for the Russians. Russians are right here, Makhno's statue is right there. I'm very certain that when the Russians reach that site of the monument, they're probably going to take pictures or so with it. And yeah, that will probably symbolize the end of the Ukrainian resistance in GULYAPOLE. The Russians have also continued their advances within the commie blocks here, within the city or the town. And I'm expecting it to be captured in the next couple of days, probably around Christmas time or maybe the 26th. Now, let's also go into the proper Dnipropetrovsk direction, or Dnipropetrovsk. Sorry if I mispronounced it. So, the Institute for the Study of War, along with a bunch of other sources, including the Z Committee, have suggested that the Russians are not only still in Novopavlovka, but they were able to prevent the Ukrainians from kicking them out of the village altogether. And because of that, the Russians definitely have control over the southern part of Novopavlovka, but there are disputes in regards to the northern part, that is, of the village. And also, Ivanovka is contested again between the Russians and Ukrainians, so that's good news for the Russians there. And then going in the vicinity of Pokrovsk, or Krasnaya Amisk, as many Russians like to call it, they are continuing to advance westward and northward of Udachny. And there's even reports that the Russians have taken control over half of this village known as Novo Piroridne, which is on the way to the strategic town of Mezova, which goes all the way to Pavlograd and Dnipropetrovsk, and also Zaporizhzhia City too. And looking at the Pokrovsk direction itself, there hasn't really been much going on except for some Ukrainian counterattacks, though it doesn't look like they were able to consolidate anything within the western side of the city. And in addition, the Russians have continued their advance within the village of Grishino, or Hrishine, and have taken more parts of it. Now, going to the Konstantinovka direction, the Russians have advanced westward from Plashivka and Ivanopilia, and have taken all these fields here across the reservoir. They are advancing very quickly towards the village of Baristok and these strategic network of defense fortifications here. Should these two things here fall, the Russians will have an easy way to enter Konstantinovka from the south. And speaking of Konstantinovka, the Russians, according to the Z Committee, have really pushed far deeper into the city, and have either captured or put these areas in a gray zone here. But Syriac, though, has not confirmed or concur with these events quite yet. What we can assume right now, though, is that the AFU defenses here are very weak, especially now with them, their best troops being in Kupiansk and also being in Sumy region. I mean, what's there really to say? The Ukrainians are kind of losing right now in Konstantinovka, and it's probably going to fall within the next 2 to 3 months. And then, going to the Sloviansk and the Kramatorsk direction, the Russians have continued advancing westward. They have seized some fields north of Pazino, and also fields south of the village of Bandarne. And in the former Bakhmut/Solidar direction, the Russians have seized complete control over the village of Orikovo-Vasilivka. And then in the Siversk direction, the Russians continued advancing westward towards the Servetsky Donets River and have taken control over a significant portion over the village of Zakantine. And in the Liman direction, the Russians continued advancing westward with the goal of cutting off one of the last supply routes for the city of Liman. And have also continued pushing towards the Servetsky Donets River in the eastern direction too, to meet up with the group of you guys who had just broken out of Siversk. There's also reports of some Russian advances east of the village of Yarova, but not really too much coming out of this direction, not even in the Borova direction too. In the Kupiansk direction, the Russians have been booted out of Petropavlovka and also are continuing to lose their positions in the northern flanks of the city of Kupiansk. Time is really short for the Russians to get their act together in that city, if you ask me. But the good news for the Russians, though, in the Kharkiv region, is that they were able to take full control over Vilcha and also Pralipka. With these captures, many of their initial objectives from the 2024 offensive into Kharkiv region has now finally succeeded, though I'm sure they're aiming for much more than these. They're going to soon have the golden opportunity to finally enter all these fields here, which should be hundreds and hundreds worth of square kilometers of land in the Kharkiv region. So very good news for Russia, now that they have locked down the outskirts of Volchansk. And finally, in the Sumy region, the Russians continue to supposedly push towards the town of Krasnopelia, though there are no current reports yet regarding how they're doing in Ryazne. And then northward, in the village of Yanakovka, the Russians have cleared the western fields of the town as well. And that's going to do it for today's video, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed it, found it informative, entertaining somewhat. I don't really care, honestly. If you liked the video, leave a comment below on what you think of everything that's been going on within Ukraine. And I'll see you all on December 26th, 2025, after Christmas. So I hope every single one of you has a great holidays. Stay safe out there with your family, friends. Share a lot of passion and love for one another. It doesn't matter. I hope every single one of you has a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. It doesn't matter. So I hope all of you has a great night, and I'll see you all next time. So take care and peace out. Bye-bye.